Hello everyone, welcome to my tutorial. Today's tutorial is going to be on the dependency injection, or in short we call that the DI. So we already talked about the DI in terms of the Spring framework, and in this tutorial I'm going to elaborate the concept a little more. So what is a dependency injection? As you can see from this definition, that the DI is the way of providing an object with its dependencies instead of constructing the dependencies by the object itself. So you can see that here we have two pieces of code, A and B. In the A, you can see that we have defined a object or a class that is called car, and within the car we have a dependent object that is the wheel. So that means whenever we are trying to create the object car, we are expecting that the wheel object needs to be created as well. And in this piece of code, we have created the wheel object manually. Okay. Now, if you look at the twist statement over here, that wheel is a dependent object for car. That is what we can see. All right. And then the car object is responsible for creating its own dependent object wheel. Okay. So the developer is doing what? The developer is creating the car object, and then within that, the car object is responsible for creating the wheel object. Okay. And that is manual. And now let's look into the next piece of code, which is B. And over here you can see that we have the same class car, but we don't have anything like this. Okay, rather we have a constructor car, and within that we are going to pass on the wheel object. Okay, so in this case what is happening, we are not creating the object by ourselves, rather something, in this case the framework, is providing the wheel object through the constructor. So if you look at this statement over here, this says that wheel is injected to car. Okay, this wheel is injected to this car, okay, object at runtime, and is called the dependency injection again. So the definition is very clear. The DI is the way of providing an object with its dependencies instead of constructing the dependencies by the object itself. So now the DI is a means that the framework is using, in this case the Spring framework is using to implement one of its characteristic, that is what we are calling the IoC. Okay, so IoC stands for Inversion of Control, and look at the characteristics over here. The IoC is a process where a framework takes control of the execution flow of the application program, such as creating classes and injecting required dependencies. Dependency injection is one of the process that is used for IoC. Okay, so if we look something over here, that let's say we have objects D, and then the dependent objects and D1, D2, D3. Okay, so that means whenever we are going to create the object D, we need to have these dependent objects ready, D1, D2, D3, and so on. Okay, let's say that is Dn. Now this is the way that is we are calling the inversion of control for Spring. So the Spring is making sure that all its dependencies are injected, okay, so that this object can run, okay, and this is being used during the runtime. So that is what the inversion of control is. Okay. So now there are a few other things over here. That inversion of control container is a Spring framework, is represented by the interface application context. Then Spring container instantiates, configures, and assembles objects which are termed as beans. Spring container also manages life cycles of beans. And web application context is an extension of application context and is used for web application. So now let's get into over here again, and then we can see that there are a few things here. One is called the beans, one is called the web application context, and the other one is the application context. Okay, so the beans is any kind of object, any object. We'll talk about the beans later on. And web application context is related to web app. So that means that whenever we are going to run our web application, we need this web application context for a Spring framework. And then application context is the main context, and it manages and configures all the objects related to create or to bootstrap our application. Okay, so that's all about the DI and the IOC. Thank you.